I have a lot of family members. I come from a religious community that doesn't believe in the public school system and tends to have a ton of kids. I have an older sister, Julia, a stepbrother, Ron, a stepsister, Molly, a half-brother, Joe, and a half-sister, Lucy. Growing up, all of us were homeschooled. This involved a lot of neglect, lack of textbooks or seasonally appropriate clothes / shoes, unheated house, and sometimes physical abuse. I lived mostly with my mom, but spent weekends with my step-family. Both houses were dysfunctional. My stepmom used to have a severe problem with alcoholism, although she's been better in the last few years. Ron is my best friend and I would be lost without him. We've supported each other through years of hard times. And we discuss a lot how our lives could have been different if we'd been sent to school or generally had a more healthy home life. Obviously, we don't want the same thing for our younger siblings. And don't want to see them struggling in minimum wage jobs while trying to study for a GED the way we're doing. When I went to visit him recently, I found that my stepmom had gone out of the country for an entire week and left the youngest two at the house. Ron and Molly both work. Molly hasn't been doing any homeschooling for about 2 years, and are out of the house for most of the day and night. I tried to help Lucy with her math homework, but she was extremely behind grade level and kept getting distracted because she had to make lunch or do chores. Joe spends all day in his room playing video games and gets no guidance from anyone. I tried to as gently as possible get him to do some reading, but he doesn't understand how serious the situation is, and obviously is having too much fun to care. So I called CPS and reported educational neglect. And obviously everyone knew it was me. And Ron told me that stepmom said I wasn't welcome at the house anymore and to never contact any of them again. Molly is extremely mad at me. She blocked me on Facebook and doesn't have a cell phone where I can reach her. Julia, who somehow heard about all this despite living across the country, also blocked me on Facebook and reported my Facebook as impersonating a celebrity. Facebook deleted it, generally making everything harder. This stings even more because I'm already estranged from my bio-mom over my religious beliefs. I now have no family members left, besides Ron, thank bejeebus, who want anything to do with me. I feel like I make enemies everywhere I go. Ron has been saying for years that he can't call CPS, and I guess this is why, but at least he doesn't blame me. He suggested that I try to talk to stepmom once some time has passed, but I would have no idea where to begin. My mom left my dad when I was 17, I'm 29 now, and had a new boyfriend literally straight away. We all suspected that she was cheating with this dude beforehand, but there was never any proof, and she even to this day refuses to admit it. She had 2 more kids with this guy. When my mom and dad broke up, I moved out to live with my dad, who had moved back in with his parents. The major reason for this was because she told me to leave as I kept fighting with her new dude. I really did not want to deal with a new guy in my mom's life, and I was really upset that she didn't give a shit about how much pain my dad was in. When she told me to leave, something in me changed and I am still unable to forgive her. That solidified BC. My 14-year-old sister stayed with my mom for a year and then begged to come and live with my dad because she hated it so much at my mom's place. And my sister and mom were close, so for my sister to feel that way, it must have been bad. Since I was 18, my grandparents kept pushing me to start a business. BC. I liked to tinker and had built a few specialized tools for a niche construction industry that my dad was in, and they saw potential in me. They gave me a lot of money as an investment. Actually, they mortgaged their house, that's much they believed in me, and basically, I majorly lucked out and managed to land some national contracts at 24 that turned into more than a few millions of dollars over a few months when the business boomed. The profit trajectory has risen since then, and basically, I'm living a life I never thought would be for a schmuck like me. I moved my dad, sister, and grandparents out to the East Coast a couple years back, and we've started a new life. I am surrounded by people who see and saw the best in me, and I'm grateful so much. BC. I was seriously messed up after my mom blew our family apart. For the last couple years or so, my mom has been on my case to reunite with her. She is getting increasingly more insistent that I go visit her and her boyfriend and kids, and keeps trying to guilt trip me because my sister has a much more privileged life now and my younger 2 half-siblings don't. She keeps telling me that even if I don't forgive her, I should look out for the kids as they're innocent in all this. She made her bed and she can lay in it, but the guilt eats me alive sometimes. I just can't forgive her though. I am a 19 years old man. On Thursday, a person I had a major crush on in high school, but who rejected me, messaged me out of the blue. She had never contacted me without my contacting her first. And at one point I realized she had had me blocked on social media, and so I found it odd that she was suddenly being friendly. After sending a couple of greetings / questions about how I've been, she said that she was going to have some people over and wanted to know if I would get the beer. The drinking age where we are is 19, and she and the people who were going to chill were all 18. The liquor stores in my area all card. I thought it was silly that my being a month older meant I could buy liquor and they couldn't, and so I said I would love to go. She said, "Thanks, I'll pick you up at 7. 7 o'clock rolled around, and she texted me to say she was in front of my house. I went out dressed and ready to chill with some people, and she drove me to the liquor store. When we got there, I asked what beer she wanted me to get, and she told me to get Budweiser. I hid my disappointment as well as I could, but it was her party, so I went in and bought 2 cases of 24. I got back in the car and said, "Let's party," and she was eerily quiet. I noticed that she wasn't driving towards her neighborhood, but rather back towards mine. I thought she had moved or something, but didn't want to press the issue. When she turned down my street, I finally figured it out. She was being purposefully vague about the invitation because she wanted me to get the beer. But she wanted a way out when she told me I wasn't actually invited in the first place. She stopped in front of my house, leaned over, kissed me on the cheek, and said, "Thanks," in her best voice. I deadpanned her and asked when she was going to tell me I wasn't invited. She feigned surprise and said that she never intended to invite me in the first place. I sat in silence for a long, awkward minute, picked up the beer, and walked towards my front door. She got out of her car and frantically tried to re-invite me to the party, but I told her that what she did was the most humiliating thing that ever happened to me. I opened my front door, slammed it a bit too hard, and came back to my room. Since my wife and I got married 3 years ago, things have been off. I know that people grow and change with time, but around our wedding, my wife changed drastically. She bleached her dark brown hair blonde right before the ceremony, and I honestly thought I was in the wrong church for a split second when she came down the aisle. We moved into our house right after the honeymoon, and she went into full domestic mode. We'd shared cleaning duties before, but once we moved into the house, she became insistent on doing everything before I could even get to it. Since this is our first house, I thought it was some kind of homeowner nesting thing, but it never stopped. Her hair color is none of my business, and I think most people would be happy not to have to clean. So I honestly didn't really think much of either of those things at the time. The big thing has always been how closed off she got after the wedding. When we were dating, she'd tell me long rambling stories about her feelings and rant to me when she was upset and all that. And I liked hearing about what was going on inside her head. After the wedding, that stopped pretty abruptly. If I ask her how her day is, she will only ever tell me that it was fine or super. She doesn't talk to me about her feelings anymore, ever, even when I explicitly ask, "How do you feel about X?" She also stopped telling me about anything important that happened to her. About a year after we got married, her grandfather died. Did she tell me she'd lost her grandfather? No. She told me that she had to go to a conference for work on the other side of the country, which I thought nothing of. On the second day she was gone. Her older brother texted me to tell me that my in-laws had really missed seeing me at the funeral. When I called her to ask why in the ever-loving hell she didn't tell me, and then lied about it, all she would say was, "I didn't want to trouble you. You have a lot on your plate." After that, she went on a couple of spontaneous family trips. She's really close to her family, so the first time she said she was going camping with her brother at their alma mater. I didn't think a lot of it other than to be slightly disappointed and confused that I wasn't invited, because her brother's cool and the 3 of us go camping together a lot. But the second time, I started hearing alarm bells. I'd like to say I'm a more secure man, but after the second spontaneous family trip, my wheels started spinning and I started to think that maybe she was cheating. This was a weird insecurity in the back of my mind for a while, since she wasn't showing any other big signs of cheating. She wasn't guarded about her phone and hadn't changed her routine / appearance. A few weeks ago, she told me she was pregnant. I was over the moon about it until I asked her how many weeks along she was, and she nonchalantly said about 12 or 13. She'd been pregnant for like 3 months before she even bothered to tell me. She's not really showing at all, and she doesn't usually drink, so I had been completely in the bloody dark. I honestly hadn't even suspected. That was kind of it for me. I was sure she was cheating, and that it wasn't my kid. I thought there was no possible way that a woman would keep her pregnancy a secret from her husband for 3 months. So I snooped. Yes, I know I was wrong, but I wanted proof that she'd been having an affair before I moved out. One of my best buddies from college is a divorce attorney, and when I asked him what I should do, he sent me the info for a key logger. I installed it on my wife's laptop and was prepared for the worst. Now, I feel like what I found is somehow worse than her cheating. I didn't find any steamy messages, but I found out that she keeps a diary in a Word document that she writes in every day. I know I should have just stopped once I knew she wasn't cheating, but once I saw my name in her diary, I couldn't stop. I read all of it. All 7 separate documents, going back to way before we'd even met. Turns out she's not cheating. She's depressed, hates herself, and has absolutely no trust in me. All of the stuff I've been confused and bothered by has some kind of sad, self-loathing explanation. She hates having blonde hair, but she writes, I know he'd divorce me if I went back to being a brunette. Because wives are supposed to be blonde almost every week. The wives are supposed to be thing is tangled up in everything. She thinks wives are supposed to be quiet, which is why she doesn't talk to me anymore. She thinks wives are supposed to make things easier for their husbands, not harder. Which is why she didn't tell me when her grandfather died. It just goes on and on and on. She didn't tell me when she got a huge promotion and a raise because he'd leave me in a heartbeat if he knew I made more money than he does. Men can't handle that. It hurt to know that she thinks of me as some kind of one-dimensional 1950s husband. And I've been racking my brain to think of anything I could have done to make her think this way. What I can't handle is that she'd lied about the big stuff. I honestly don't know if I can forgive her for not telling me about the miscarriages. The spontaneous family trips were actually her miscarrying 2 of our children, one at 5 weeks, the other at about 10. She went and stayed with her parents while she was recuperating, and her brother and sister came to support her. But not me. I didn't get to be there for her, because she thinks I would leave her immediately if I knew that she'd killed our children. She's convinced that she caused both miscarriages because she smoked pot for a long time before we got married. For what it's worth, it sounds like her family tried both times to get her to tell me, but she wouldn't. She finally told me about this pregnancy because her parents threatened to tell me she didn't. I'm just absolutely confused. I don't even know what to think right now. I'm just so baffled because everything she says about me in her diary is insanely nice. She goes on for pages and pages about how much she loves me and how she thinks I'm her soulmate and how she would do anything for me. I just can't understand why she thinks that I would leave her. Knowing that she's spent the last 3 years walking on eggshells around me, convinced that I would leave her at the drop of a hat is just so confusing and awful. I feel like our marriage is some kind of lie. The woman I thought was self-confident and ready to take on the world is actually full of self-loathing and really, really depressed. I don't know her at all. She's been suffering silently with depression long before we met. She has no faith in me, no trust. She thinks that every hug and kiss I give her and every "I love you" I say is a lie. I just don't know what to do. She obviously needs serious help, but I don't know how to get it for her. I can't tell her that I read her diary. If she has zero trust in me now, I can't even imagine what she'd think if she knew if I read 6 years worth of her private thoughts. I feel like I need to get my in-laws on board somehow, but I don't know what to say to them. I know I can't ignore this, but I feel like any move is the wrong move.